A big thank you to all the friends from near and far who have joined us virtually for this webinar, the fourth in our sustainability series. I can even say today to all, Happy Valentine's Day. As many of you know, we are the first and only law school in the Kingdom of Bhutan. On November 25th last year, in the presence of His Majesty the King of Bhutan and our Honorable President, Her Royal Highness Princess Sonam Dechen Wangchuk, we celebrated the graduation of our very first class of law students, 13 young women and 12 young men. Even as we focus on producing the next generation of legal experts and leaders in Bhutan, we are also focused on addressing urgent problems within our society and the world, such as climate change. I'm proud to tell you that, thanks to grants from the Karuna Foundation and the Asia Foundation, JSW Law has launched the Climate Change Law and Policy Project. Our first event is a special powder forum happening on campus next week from February 22nd to 24th, which will gather leaders and stakeholders from Bhutan and around the world to impart lessons and drive forward momentum in effectively addressing climate change. In November 2021, we gathered virtually to launch the JSW Law Sustainability Fund. This is a special effort to strengthen our operations as we set up the new campus, launch new programs for students and faculty, and develop exciting initiatives such as the Climate Change Law and Policy Project. Last June, we had our third webinar organized by our students who discussed their perspective as budding lawyers on the preservation and promotion of Bhutan's traditions and cultural heritage. Today, we are thrilled to explore one very innovative part of JSW curriculum, our Appropriate Dispute Resolution, or ADR clinic. You will hear from our clinic director, Kunzang Doma, as well as some of our talented students. We are very fortunate to have our host and moderator today, Ambassador Milan Verveer, Executive Director of the Georgetown Institute of Women, Peace and Security. Ambassador Verveer previously served as the first U.S. Ambassador for Global Women's Issues, a position to which she was nominated by President Obama in 2009. She coordinated foreign policy issues and activities relating to the political, economic, and social advancement of women, traveling to nearly 60 countries. She worked to ensure that women participation and rights are fully integrated into U.S. foreign policy, and she played a leadership role in the administration's development of the U.S. National Action Plan on Women, Peace and Security. President Obama also appointed her to serve as the U.S. representative to the UN Commission on the Status of Women. From 2000 to 2008, she was the chair and co-CEO of Vital Voices Global Partnership, an international NGO that she co-founded to invest in emerging women leaders. During the Clinton administration, she served as assistant to the president, and chief of staff to the First Lady. She also led the effort to establish the President's Interagency Council on Women and was instrumental in the adoption of the Trafficking Women's Victims Protection Act of 2000. She is also the co-author of Fast Forward, How Women Can Achieve Power and Purpose, 2015. Ambassador Verveer has a BS and MS from Georgetown University and holds several honorary degrees. She is the recipient of numerous awards, including the Secretary of State's Award for Distinguished Service. In 2008, the President of Ukraine awarded her the Order of Princess Olga. And I'm so proud to say, in 2019, Ambassador Verveer led a group of leaders in women's empowerment to Bhutan for an education visit through the Women for Impact organization. Much of this visit happened in coordination with JSW Law, which we deeply appreciate. Ambassador Verveer, thank you for your work and your vision. We are so happy to see you again. We are eager to hear from you and deeply appreciate your work to host and moderate this webinar today. Over to you, Ambassador Verveer.
Well, it's an absolute honor and pleasure to be back with all of you at JCW. And thank you so much, Dean Dorji. It's great to see you. Although virtually, I look forward to seeing you again in person one day. I'm so thrilled to have this opportunity to join in the discussion on appropriate dispute resolution. But before I do, I would just like to make a personal note. As you heard, in the fall of 2019, I had the opportunity to visit Bhutan on a learning trip that featured a group of people from different parts of the world, all committed to Women for Impact, and to learn much more about Bhutan than each of us knew, about the values, the traditions, as well as your commitment to creating a better world, and also why you are one of the top-rated countries in the world on happiness, because we all strive for happiness. As your mission states, the JSW Law School is in pursuit of justice, service, and wisdom in order to create a more compassionate and sustainable world. And I couldn't imagine a better mission for anyone, but particularly for a law school. I remember about that trip so much, the beauty of Bhutan, its rich culture, its dedicated people, and so much more. But I must say, what impressed me more than anything, and much did impress me, were the exceptional students of JSW with whom we interacted in countless discussions, large and small. The brilliance of the students, their determination to make a difference, their powerful commitment to service came through in everything they said and has stayed with me. I remember our visit to your former campus and all the rich conversations that took place there. Every encounter seemed to be so inspiring. And I know since then you've moved to your new green campus in Paro. You've graduated your first class after the students had 5 years of matriculation, and you continue to excel in every way. And I look forward to visiting you one day in Paro so I can see how JSW continues to inspire and thrive. I have been working on issues to advance progress for women and girls over the world over many years. And today at Georgetown's Institute for Women, Peace, and Security, we engage in research to create that evidence-based case about women's participation and the difference it makes in peace building, in conflict resolution, and in relief and recovery post-conflict. How the meaningful inclusion of women makes a critical contribution to peace and security. We also bring leaders together on some of the most pressing issues of our time, like climate change, and spotlight the role of women on the front lines, from Ukraine to Myanmar, from Iran to Colombia. And we invest in our students, as you do, the future leaders, in our case, in peace and security. And I'm so pleased that Director Dolma had an opportunity to visit us in Washington some months ago. I'm so looking forward to this discussion on dispute resolution, how you uphold traditional dispute resolution practices and yet adapt as Bhutan develops. I must say that I'm very interested in learning how inclusion of women makes a difference, how your mediation and negotiation techniques might contribute even to conflict resolution in so many areas around the globe. And so I look forward to this discussion. I look forward to once again hearing from the students. And now let me turn the floor over to Director Dolma to introduce herself and the students.
Thank you. Kuzu Sampula. I am Kyunjang Dolma, the Clinical Director for the Appropriate Dispute Resolution Clinic. I also teach alternative dispute resolution courses at Jigme Singh Yawanchu School of Law. As shared by our dean and our moderator today, Ambassador Verveer, we look forward to sharing about the Appropriate Dispute Resolution Clinic, its work experiences, about alternative dispute resolution in Bhutan, about how JSW Law is keeping this tradition alive. And as we talk about all of this, to see about inclusion of women in the practice of mediation in Bhutan.
Kusampula, my name is Ching Yanki, and I'm a final year law student in Jigme Singh Yawanchu School of Law, and I am one of the members of the Appropriate Dispute Resolution Clinic. My journey in the ADR clinic has been an impactful and an insightful one, and through this journey I've come to grow personally and professionally, and I hope through today's webinar we're able to share some of the insights we gained in the ADR clinic.
Kusampula, my name is Ching, and I'm a final year student at JSW Law with the ADR clinic. I guess it's safe to say that I'm completely swept away by the concept of alternative dispute resolution, because the concept of consensus building and curating innovative solutions for different issues really fascinates me. I hope to share my thoughts and experiences during this webinar today.
Are there any other students who are going to speak?
Yes, there's one online.
Kusampula, my name is Pasangomo. I'm a final year law student and I've also taken ADRC as my clinic. So in today's webinar, I hope you get to know what ADRC is, how ADR has been more than just a clinic for us, a space for growth, knowing ourselves better, and I hope you also get to know how ADR has been helping us a lot, not just grow ourselves as lawyers, but also personally. And in today's webinar, again, I hope everyone gets to know more about ADRC and what we have been up to.
Well, it's so great to meet all of you, and just listening to you takes me back to my visit to Bhutan when we heard from so many of the students and were so inspired by you. We're going to turn now to a video on JSW and the clinic, and then we'll come back and have a discussion.
Kusampula, welcome to the Appropriate Dispute Resolution Clinic at Jigme Singh Yawanchu School of Law. In this video, we will be talking about alternative dispute resolution in Bhutan and the role Appropriate Dispute Resolution Clinic is playing in keeping it alive. In the past, when disputes arose, and if the parties are not able to come to an agreement, they would take the matter to an elder called a Koshingenshi. So Koshingenshi is a respectable elder in the community. I'll now try to provide an illustration. Say for example, there are two neighbors, where a neighbor's cow ate all the cabbages in another neighbor's garden. Now if the neighbors are not able to come to an agreement regarding the compensation amount, they would take the matter to an elder's place for a mediation. In traditional practice of mediation, an elder would suggest a solution to which the parties would agree.
In addition to elders, local leaders have also engaged in mediation, and they have played a vital role in promoting peace in the communities. When the country transitioned to democracy, elected form of local government also carried forward this role.
Today, the law school is also keeping this tradition of dispute resolution alive through ADR courses and a clinic specifically dedicated to ADR. At JSW School of Law, there are 3 clinics, and one of them is the Appropriate Dispute Resolution Clinic, also in short known as the ADRC. If you're wondering what the ADR clinic is, the Appropriate Dispute Resolution Clinic is a platform that provides experiential learning by giving students the opportunity to enhance and hone their dispute resolution skills and knowledge by mediating real cases or working on projects related to ADR.
What? Students mediating real cases?
Yes, you heard us right. The student studies mandatory course on alternative dispute resolution prior to joining the clinic. Upon joining the clinic, they study and refresh their ADR skills in 3 weeks intensive seminar, which is also the component of the course.
So how do they work on real cases?
The ADR Clinic partners with an institute or organization providing mediation services and takes part in their mediation. This year, the ADR Clinic has partnered with the Court Annex Mediation Unit at the Family and Child Bench of Thimphu District Court in Bhutan's capital, Thimphu. At the Court Annex Mediation Unit, students get the opportunity to use the skills learned in the ADR courses and in the ADR Clinic seminar component. The students first join with the bench clerk mediators and observe real mediation done by them. During this time, students are acquainted with the pre-mediation forms and agreement to mediate at the Court Annex Mediation Unit. The students are also acquainted to draft mediation settlement agreements. Then, clinic students take up the role of mediator, where 2 students are paired to jointly work as co-mediators to resolve matrimonial disputes that come before the Family and Child Bench. The students then apply the skills learned in the clinic and mediate the matrimonial disputes. Once the dispute is settled, the students draft the settlement agreement, which is then reviewed by the designated bench clerk and shown and read out to the parties. Upon the parties' confirmation on the terms and conditions, the agreement is signed by the parties and submitted to the judge for confirmation.
So the focus is only on mediation, right?
No, the ADR Clinic also helps prepare law students to take part in more recent dispute resolution processes such as arbitration. This year, the clinic has partnered with the Bhutan Alternative Dispute Resolution Center to provide legal assistance in the amendment of their rules and regulations by doing a comparative study with some of the leading arbitration centers in the world.
From this video, you must have understood about the long tradition of negotiation and mediation in Bhutan and how the law school is playing a role in keeping these traditions alive. We hope that through this video, you were also able to observe that these courses are making the practice of mediation and negotiation more inclusive for women in Bhutan. I want to reiterate that our law school ADR courses, and more importantly the ADR Clinic, is giving our future lawyers the opportunity to hone their skills and be confident to take part in alternative dispute resolution, to use amicable approaches to resolving dispute in a society that focuses on enhancing gross national happiness.
Well, that was very, very informative. And now I think it would be very interesting to our audience to actually have a conversation with the students to probe a little bit further some of the key issues that came up in the video and to learn a bit more how you use the techniques that you use to be able to arbitrate in this among disputes in situations that are probably everyday situations, but also not so much. So let me go back to the director and to the students and begin by asking about Bhutan's long tradition of mediation. It came up in the video, I thought, very well, but perhaps you can tell us in the audience a bit more about that tradition.
So I'll take your question. Bhutan has a long history of resolving disputes through traditional mediation, and that's why although mediation is considered an alternative dispute resolution mechanism today, it has always existed as the primary dispute resolution mechanism in Bhutan, and it's called Langkhanandi in Bhutan, which translates to internal settlement. And informal systems of dispute resolution, such as mediation and negotiation, are said to exist in Bhutan as early as the 8th century because of the mediation or settlement between 2 kings, Gyab Nauche and Gyab Sindhuraja, by Guru Padmasambhawa in the 8th century. And that mediation was done in Nabji Korfu in Trongsa, that is the district in central Bhutan. And as a symbol of successful mediation between the 2 kings, stone pillar is erected at the site, and it can still be seen today. Therefore, mediation in Bhutan is not new and has existed for a very long time. However, the role of women in mediation was not as prominent in the past, and so therefore through this webinar, we hope to shed more light on how the inclusion of women can make a difference in the world.
Well, thank you. And I think it's noteworthy that among the students are 3 extraordinary women. And I'm eager to continue to hear from you. So when you talk about this long tradition of dispute resolution or mediation in Bhutan, how is that being adapted? Because you don't discount it, you adapt it to the changes that we find as the country develops. So what are the techniques that the law school uses to promote alternative dispute resolution?
So I'll take that question since I'm the one teaching it. So ever since the early days of curriculum development, the law school has kept a strong emphasis on keeping alternative dispute resolution courses like mediation, negotiation, and the recent one in Bhutan, arbitration, as mandatory courses. So in other parts of the world, law schools might keep alternative dispute resolution courses as optional or electives, but here it's mandatory. In addition to that, students, when they're in their final year, they have to take clinical courses. These courses are there are 3 here in at JSW, and it all focuses in work related to social change and social issues. And one of those is the appropriate dispute resolution clinic. And at the appropriate dispute resolution clinic, so the students have already studied the required mandatory courses, and when they come to the clinic, they do the refresher. And it's not just about learning through role plays in the classroom, but really taking up real disputes, trying to resolve those, because it's only when you take part in real disputes would you be able to sort of know what your drawbacks are, where to improve, and also some of the least expected things that one is not taught in the classroom. So these have been the approaches. I also feel that our doctrinal courses and research courses on gross national happiness also sort of brings all the other courses like ADR and all together, sort of keeping the tradition of ADR alive with the emphasis on gross national happiness.
You know, it's really fascinating to hear about the approach, because a lot of it is learning through practice. And I think that's one of the paramount ways that the clinic operates. I wonder, Director, I know, as you said, there are 3 clinics, and I know there's one on social entrepreneurship and one on dignity, and there's this one. How was it that this became one of the 3?
It's like I shared earlier. I think, in fact, this was one of the first clinic that the curriculum development decided on, that Bhutan has this practice. It's still alive, and so it is very much relevant in Bhutan and JSW's laws context to have a clinic that is specifically focused on alternative dispute resolution. And I also want to share that we've kept the name as appropriate dispute resolution, because like Choi Ying said, our legal system that is currently there came in late 1959 or 1960s, but then dispute resolution through mediation, negotiation were known, and as Choi Ying shared, there's record of it being there since 8th century. So we decided to keep it as appropriate dispute resolution, because at one point it was the form of dispute resolution.
There's certainly plenty of disputes to be resolved everywhere. So it's important to train lawyers in this field. And perhaps you can expand on that that notion, training lawyers in this practice?
I'll take this question, Ambassador Weber. So generally, as I see it, we perceive lawyers in a negative light. That is, we have a negative stereotype against them. So in my personal experience, when I joined law school, I thought I had to be that combative lawyer, that I had to either win or lose a case, and that I had to have a partisan way of working. But after taking the ADR courses and the ADR clinic, I came to realize that it does not always have to be the win or lose situation, but that it can also be a win-win situation. So in ADR, we learn concepts such as neutrality, empathy, perspective taking, active listening, and so on. So I believe that such concepts in ADR, it can aid lawyers in providing effective professional solutions, and that it can also contribute to leaving parties satisfied in the dispute. So I think due to that, it is important to train lawyers in the field, not only lawyers around the globe, but also Bhutanese lawyers. And for Bhutan, I think this would not be the only reason as to why lawyers should be trained in dispute resolution. As my friend already mentioned, because we have had this long tradition of Nangkha Nangdrik, or internal dispute settlement, where disputes are solved amicably without having to resort to litigation. So I believe that in order to preserve or uphold such a tradition, which is so significant to us Bhutanese, we have to train lawyers in this field. And lastly, I'd say for a country who's governed by the principles of gross national happiness, it becomes ever more important to train lawyers in this field to uphold one of the domains of gross national happiness, which is community vitality. So when the disputes arises, by resorting to appropriate dispute resolution schemes, we're able to keep the parties satisfied, and we try to involve the parties more in their own dispute resolution. So such a scheme then makes sure that the parties they leave the dispute settlement more satisfied. So in order to preserve the relationship and to promote community vitality, I think we should train lawyers in this field.
Well, that's a wonderful answer, and I'm sure that as you graduate and move on and begin to practice as a lawyer, that you're going to look back on the learnings that you've garnered, both through your coursework and the clinic. And I love the way that so many of the conversations in Bhutan really do have the happiness index in front of you, because all of these kinds of successful ways of, for example, in this case, adjudicating disputes really brings a greater harmony to all of society. So that's always so fascinating for those of us who aren't from Bhutan. But let me ask, since we have 3 female students, a female director, what's the role of inclusion of women's participation in Bhutan in mediation? Because I know in years past, it certainly was not inclusive of women, but that's obviously changing.
Yes, you're very much correct. It wasn't much inclusive in the past. In fact, if you look at records, we don't have like the earlier sort of historical records of women having mediated disputes. The change has occurred after the elected form of local government started. Women's participation in local government started, and if we go to today's data, it's around 14% of women in 14% in LG are women, in local government are women. And so, like we shared in the video, the tradition has been carried forward by elders and local leaders, and when the elected form of local leaders happened, women's inclusion happened, and then that role automatically got carry forward because our rules and regulation in certain forms of dispute like water, land, tenancy required local government to take that role of mediation, and so women's inclusion started there. There's also more recent, and although the Port Annex mediation program started in 2019, I think the service being fully optional was around maybe last year, 2021, 2022. And so in there as well, there are female bench clerk who do mediation. But what the law school brings is, with its student population being 70% female, these courses are mandatory, so they study them. If they take my clinic, then they get to practice them. And so as I shared earlier in the video, it just gives them further strengthening of their skills, practicing. And as a woman, confidence is really important. These young girls who take up this role, even if they don't see or haven't seen, and society doesn't perceive them as the mediator, they will be going from here very much confident. And hopefully, as the pool of lawyers get filled with JSW graduates, we'll see more and more women providing that service. So that's my thing.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear how you've included that. Can we hear from the other student on this?
I'll try to add on that. So, to add on regarding the status of women as mediators in Bhutan, as a research assistant last summer while I was conducting a research interview for mediation textbook in Bhutan, I was able to learn that the respectable elders or respectable individuals in a community, we call them Koshinishis in our language. So those elders or individuals to whom people would normally take their disputes to for mediation, especially if they are not able to come to an agreement regarding a matter, have always been males in Bhutanese societies. And even today, if we ask people in a community to define what Koshinishi means to them, or what a respectable elder or individual in community means to them, they would try to associate or connect this definition with that of a male figure. And as Madam Kinsung mentioned earlier, in Bhutan, when it comes to the status of women as mediators, of course, we could see a slight increase in the number of women taking up the role of mediator, but when the figure is compared to that of male mediators, it's still very less, and hopefully in the next few years we see a drastic increase in the number of women taking up this role of problem solving.
Well, I'm sure that will be the case, and these evolutions start slowly. Certainly change takes place in this way, and as the director said also, as you have more JSW students graduating and moving into this field, there'll be greater acceptance of women as mediators. But it's fascinating to hear how you've already made so much progress in this space. In the last question, there was an answer that put this issue in the context of gross national happiness. And I noted that I was always intrigued, and certainly during my visit to Bhutan, very intrigued about how this was a critical factor in all of the work that was being done across the country. And perhaps it would be useful to tease that out a little bit more, to elucidate on it a bit more, and explain to our audience how this technique that you use, the work that you do, how it does actually help to promote gross national happiness.
Most of the audience would already know what gross national happiness is, but just to set context about what I'm about to share, I just want to share, and in case if there's anybody who's wondering what it is. So Bhutan's development approach is focusing on gross national happiness. It's an approach where we have a more sustainable and holistic approach. And there are four main pillars to it, which are good governance, so that the state enables the pursuit of gross national happiness. Then there's environmental conservation, there's preservation and promotion of culture, and there's the sustainable socio-economic development. Now, the fact that I just said those out, if you're from ADR background, you must have connected the dot. But if I have to give a general sort of an answer, and that is keeping the gender aside. So as you can see, as I said, what the main pillars are in all of this, we're not just focusing on economic development. Yes, everybody would like more job opportunities, economic growth, but what we're trying to do is preserve our environment. We have a rich culture, which we're trying to preserve. We also want sustainable development. We want economic activities, but at the same time, we want to continue providing free healthcare, free education. And as we do that, you can just understand that there will be people who will come with diverse thoughts and opinion. And if you take up ADR approaches or the skills that are required in ADR, it just helps policymakers be more inclusive of diverse opinion and thoughts. If we take the gender sort of a role, if I put it to that context, then I would also want to highlight that there's only 12% of female parliamentarians, 12% of female parliamentarians in Bhutan. And so if we have more females skilled in ADR, knowing the approaches, knowing the skills, and should they not just be lawyers, but go into other policy making matters or other services, then there too, my students, I think, would bring in a lot of more skills and knowledge that would help build a GNH society.
That's just a wonderful understanding that you provided and how all of this fits together. And I like very much the fact that you mentioned policy making, because so many with legal careers and backgrounds do go into policy work, whether in elective office or in other governmental and related kinds of work. And one can see very easily from your description how all of this fits together. You know, we've been talking about theory and the practice, and I wonder if the students have any favorite stories of success that they've already achieved and can give us some concrete examples of this.
Just to supplement what
the one on the screen has her hand raised, sorry.
Yes, Pasang?
Regarding the favorite story of success, well, I wonder if every audience here would think of it as a story of success, but for me it has been, and that was being able to know myself better. So initially when I joined the law school, I knew that I was interested in law, but I wasn't sure of which specific areas of law I was more interested in. So that's why when in the first few years of law college, the elective courses were introduced, I would randomly choose them without thinking over if I'm really interested in it or not. However, after taking up ADRC in my fourth year, I was able to know my specific areas of interest. So that's when last semester, when the externship opportunities for this semester were announced, I was so sure, I was so confident about my interest areas, and being able to know myself better not only include being able to know what my specific areas of interest are, but it also included being able to know what my strengths are, what my weaknesses are, and being able to discover more about myself and knowing where I need to do more. So this has by far been the most favorite part of having taken up ADRC and in doing the works that are related to the clinic.
Well, that's so wonderful to hear. Did you feel that you grew in confidence too as you were participating in the program?
Yes, because through ADR clinic, as I mentioned earlier, I was able to know my specific areas of interest, and also during the practical learning, the outreach program, and also some hands-on experience in coordinates mediation, I was able to know where my strengths lie, where my weaknesses are, where I need to do more, and with the help from my clinic members and also my clinic director, I was able to gain some confidence and also acquire some skills that help me grow not just as lawyers, as I mentioned earlier, but also as a person.
Thank you. Do the other students want to weigh in on their success stories? Please.
If I'm to share one of my favorite success story while doing the work in ADR clinic, I'd say the advocacy work we did for persons with disabilities. So here we did an advocacy on the different dispute resolution schemes we have in Bhutan for civil disputes, and the skills I had learned from my ADR course in clinic on having empathy and active listening skills, it really helped me connect better with the persons with disabilities who came for the advocacy, and I believe we did a good job there. So this by far has got to be my favorite success story in the ADR clinic.
Well, that's a good one, and I'm sure you did a good job. Do you want to say anything? Do you want to add?
Okay, sure. One of my favorite success stories was when we mediated a family dispute at the Court Annex Mediation Unit, and I got to see that through ADR or especially mediation, we could preserve relationships between people, and that really helps to enhance the community vitality domain of GNH. And so I feel that through this work, I can contribute to the nation, and it's very fulfilling.
Very good. Well, we're talking about successes, and we often learn from our failures. I wonder if any of you want to talk about failures that you experienced.
Okay, so what I'd like to share a story, and that was there was a time when me and my friend Karma Tenzin, we mediated a family dispute again, and everything went well from my perspective because I thought the process would have been perceived fair by both the parties, but however the mediation was still an impasse, and it couldn't be successful. But still that didn't matter so much to me, because I learned the role a third party could play in the mediation process, and I saw that being brought into perspective only when we did real life cases. And I feel that the classroom learning was just mostly limited to materials on the mediation process and on the mediator's role. But through experience, I got to see the role a third party plays in mediation, and I feel that was really important to take away.
Yeah, that's a great example. Anybody else want to comment on failures, or have you not experienced any failures? Well, we could.
I think.
Please.
I think one of a failure story would be where Pasom and we were co-mediators, but due to our lack of knowledge in our local dialects, which was Lhotshamka, we were not able to communicate better with our clients. So since then, we've tried to learn different dialects in our country so that we could provide better services. So I think the language barrier part was a bit saddening for us.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Pasang, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I was just thinking of sharing the language barrier story that Yanti just shared. Two of us were mediators, and they spoke in a dialect we were not able to understand, so communication became a little difficult.
Yeah, and it's learning through these opportunities to really practice that there are obstacles that you may not think about that clearly you have all discussed as needing to overcome, when it may not have been apparent when you started. But I think the discussion on failure is important because it's really important to learn from what didn't work or learn from the obstacles one confronted. And we often are so focused on wanting to succeed, as we all want to succeed. But I think there were important lessons from when failure gets in our pathway. So thank you for that as well. I think we're going to have another video, but I must say that this conversation has been extremely illuminating and is just an example of the extraordinary students that JSW has and works with. So let's turn to the video and then we'll take questions from our audience.
Gawaling sewi udika aptenzida amwamni nin multiple nankana di chabi thona.
For example, the dari nabuni gitu design ni dan nankana ji chabache nam tu loka di chesi shugela. Te ngarai ngoti chua chin ni ni chain I te ngara jimsi yon chitingi lop tena longa pick up to in session ringa. Te ngarai ngoti chua chin ni ni chunyanki te ngara jimsi yon chitingi lop tegi longa pick up to in la. Na Japanese 쓰고 지치라.
님이 빠송모이.
For example, 님ing dekar matentenla.
대다리 같이 난디디 구마츠기 해마 나분이 투카 남고 나기 슈터 치가 왔진데 나분이 로 마텝다 마디오 같이 뱀는 것을 신빙나 같이서 왔진 같이 안진기 나하난디 라시치라 베디에 데 같이 너무 숨비까블에 나하난디다 데기 최신세 합디 신빙나 데다 같이 난디디 구츠기 몰라디 디덴도 가기 디지 duntar issue da chipa wachindi damchi saudalu nabuni lo de suse be shui kablu gijapi thole shu na se shunda chikabe de chiki lo labdalu panale ka chapi de su mada titelen lo nyen be bodalu denzin ewachewa me se shunwina
dadi de da nabuni tokolo anzum dokpare dongla da 이들이 중고지 배울래 다 난지 배우기 로지서 치가래 감히 해가 세 다디 차게 남은 것이 주니라 다 팀 레벨이야 다 난디방아 치니야 상업의 자리기 긴코였다 다나 자피니 기별이야 나 난디 배우기 로지서 치가 뭐 heb지비 배 것이 주니 다 난디 배우기 디나로 소소베 다 자피니 뭐라 소소베 치니기 디야 샹스 주니라 디갑도다 자핀치기 혼레베 인베스 다 다년 민도 사좀 투섬 시마나스 주니라
시티즈메디나 암오모 별에 나이 카들레 소디 카리잖아.
코당한 인돔디게 베입지로 게테질 라뇨라. 땡아 치니게 파나 알루잉이 유라. 알루 붐쇼디게 로투 데 충고디 타도마파 메케 참라이라 루니 람치. 땡아 치니게 파나 타투슨스 가르 레줌베 주일라 인레 바갑질레 데입지로니 테질라뇨라. 코이 아따라 침나 이선알레 차통 텔렌 침나 펜토에 가니미 슈메 가니마 베오베 땡아라다 알루기 타둔 타베타 수수지 조타 베와 진세 땡아 타리나 테베 자추
데다나 업데이트 카트레 스니어 같이
tato tamapana amomugi shudo zumbi la tenga chini mapa logen hapchi ta nyenchabe tebe deiti chuni tamchi bana denga chi satang kato toki toto vera tebe dei la ta tichibe dalu ta loni de chi asi la chi netang tikyu chi jobe tele tabmadu chi ten ban bodalu te tare amomugi bewa jinta khajeni be shusi che su sanula ta ani boda ta ngarai khatuli bewa jin tebe khajeni me ba ta satang gaim bera 다 지가 되니 집으로 인세 다니베 쇼니 빌라
나 아무도 앞에서 로스 닌다우들루다 나니 알루미늄 심 판셈 도몰라 다 나니기 투코남 kopti가 랑게 알루기 마음볼 걸레로 스타 베난디 비디카리 장나슈니 다나 앞에서 기 찬투니수 답마두스 걸 에스주디 바니콜라시 세디 슈스코친
다 루니 대질레 쿠기 아따라 차통 텔렌 침나루 라이브 마투 데터나 포줄친나니 온라인 게임스 두볼라 코 아니라지 디데비나 코이 데 온라인 게임스 자지 텔 알루레 텐다 가니미가 초다 땅올레 침나 데 알루기 생컴병아 남스미 차기라멜라 다 생감 소도 또 체리 담에 벌라 지카베 슈자고 빌라 딘타 치 대지게 해망아 쟈니 parent teachers meeting 수유라 롭저나루 데 레베다 텔렌 알루기 팜디 수기 파나 신좀 다니 소비 갑루 ngaram hindi 코스모스라 페베 타임 벌라 데 알루디 침나는 스누로 데 온데라 아잉가 나팔레 마팔레 롭저네 미주 모사야세 데 같이 베이스 투수바이 알루디 티자 티수지 가냐람 민돌라 데 록 알루디기 롭캉레비기 순데라 티나파 Akademo chu abdi shensom na chathung be lab to mato khara labdi alude lu sung sung se thega chamchi hakuila nani buda de khoda chi khara de bachin tangara de kheminu bala de udangi alugi misigi ne tangi tagob du moslani buda de so bere de tapchi bachin sani
The updates the amomudi nagi chanthuni di anjam chita multa madu memote di kole nai khatule se bishuni kala
mapa da nagi da chanthuni seru da hemadnam se matula lokshule da netang ati tamadu tejnal chamji tunugu ti la da dia mapa ache da jisana luate la mambe ten atudu thache tizumbe da ti semkham de to chi medalu te be chance tunugu ti shunila majida cham matumba de chimna onde biru de da loni de chigam chi gi shude de da amdi gi ati labni chan di sumam de le kentani andus at mam bedalu da ti henkila semshi anzum bendi ati de mam tungu tesi shunila da majida aluda de amsugi thegalu di de konlu sewa yeb mato de mago di sale mi shunila tani boda da alugi thadin chen ostan bedalu tenga chi sasangdi da chikhara dego bese dani be de nostanda yus shunila ngare khatuli bewajin
야테지 다나 딘타치나 베친데 찬차가 듬치리 통도 이나라
다리캅 치잠지 아티아네 베 통야서 헤모디암 치투니밀라
나 아무아무도 앞테지 단 창이 콜레 딘제레 베 아니 콜레 칼랍다 이거를 차지
베라타 코추 탑지 주니 요진 스노베베 땡가다 파팀부딩니 아짐 마징이 차코 직튼 펜데스 마포루티 리합기 Shaptora Javela, Tenelucho of Junior Watching say the Churu Chalakara Dam Pake Saila, the Mapo Shochin Gate Assismela. Chala member in Redo with Dam Pake Houchin, Tubato Masula Kosuchim Loton Lang Mide Sepalo. The Arnuzum give me Mela Kagi Mahisu the Chikara Dunin Guy, the Chama Polera Mutum Jenny is the Todoko Luchi Luciani will be watching so you get Sagila, the Chandra Jasu which in the Nicotule Tiluniling Bibimin Lamapa.
na updating si khatule sumi bachi
lasla mapa te hemai debe te thachi dinga che yani rehab na jo bende be te pete la tin lo te ngagi ta betuni mes no be no stain te bodolo te be masula tani be disi te tichi be gale te loktira te ngagi ti rehab na jo dige te chanji che subbe be ni se shunila mapa ta amomugi dalu ta alugi kole te shu ani bodolo Tengare Devra Institute ta alugi thadin chi ta tenga chi sangi nosa chi ta bodalu kade beru chi khate watin di lejum bajoni mese ta ani bin digi to ta rehab gi thega di te loktira tengara gi nosa chi ta bodalu te kade beru jodi ge chi su penila timba se te hama ta chanthung be dalu te ati ta tabadu ten tizumbe jaching yembate bi chasalu tengara lu hilera logiki di sunila tani boda disu jurjibe disumbe ngarolo da lejujibe tutablu tengagi chandi kate beru de shansu bre benila
tida updating che chai mithon te telen rehab ne jumi sem ko bangalam sem kaila te amo mo updating gira debe jurjibe homba chin di che khatul nyelin ne kala
tangari khatule bochin te chagera khugi chandi thashe bechebe theri bari be khadebe to subga sui chagila Kachu sochi tachu shudu zumbe hemaya sachi kuyani be tu shushuni la je subse de chandi theri bari be to sub ja subse wachindi dekho aluge phami de khorami ngobe namsmi le jumi la ani budangari khatule bere de lukcham dewa matumi se ani la de inringi khatule be wachinta tinalu ne tangpe be wachin chimna umchin te phadil thindera to dini me mathese ka hum tele ngale achire la rubbe de chimna alule thusepchi de khora chandira to subachindi chambido ba matumi la ngai khatule
The updates in Liberia da amomu yile de sumbera chama thoba de rehab na jutsu ba le betsuka
ngare khatule to amomugi te netang tisu shemilu te matumi shunila tamboragi nalu shudu zumbe tengagi te ta temseni tisu sha te chantuni tisu sha tizumbe te sasangi phamigi genkuchi da te alugi te apachi te lejumbe pesube te genkutu mashupchibe te pesubegi kelanda taube tengagi te talefa the chandi che subera beni se shunila
Tida dari nga chigi nanji di amchi bi judu I te irura nabuni ki shumidi nga gi tente be ha gui ka mago ka tani tendo te nga lokdi shudi phege te inomena chisona damchi se utalo uptenzi di changthuni jabe be rehab na juni semidi imbe te telen dale phata ko mobile na nam simi chi da game du se mitse se inda chimna gi nabini chani du se char be os indala te debi imola in last la tida ngachigi nanji amchi bi judi te telen ngagi atskale nanji gen jaji so di pyula
Well, it was so interesting to see how this technique really plays out with a real case. And so my congratulations to all the students who were involved in the presentation. We have just a couple of minutes left, and maybe I know there are a number of questions from the audience, but let me just touch on one and put that to you before we have to close. And that is, we've been learning a lot today about dispute resolution and as it's practiced and taught in Bhutan. How can this potentially be applied, this technique, be applied to other pressing issues of our time, global issues like climate change? Does anybody want to comment on that?
If I may start, one of the global issues right now is, as everyone knows, it's the climate issue, as Mary mentioned earlier. So if you think of it as in the global context right now, one importance of the applicability or the usefulness of ADAR techniques in the global issues I see is very much useful, because for instance, under the global climate change issue right now, some vulnerable states suffer harms and damages caused due to climate-induced events. And in such situations, if the victim states or if the vulnerable states want talks regarding possibility of compensation from the polluting nations in order to create opportunities for dialogue and negotiations and also for consensus building, I believe that the skills taught in the ADRC or ADAR techniques are very much required.
Well, I think you're so right. And I hope we do see more application of this technique in the months and years to come to really make a difference, not just in Bhutan, but on a global level. And with that, I will conclude by thanking the marvelous students. You uphold the JSW tradition of excellence. You've all been absolutely terrific. Thank you, Director Dolma, and I'm going to pass this back now to the Dean.
Wow, what a fascinating discussion we have had today about Bhutan's long tradition of resolving disputes through mediation and negotiation. It has been very important to explore this topic in the context of women's empowerment and to learn how our law school can help uphold this tradition and strengthen inclusion of women in this dispute resolution processes. Many thanks for our host and moderator, Ambassador Milan Verveer, and to our participants. Milan Verveer, sorry. In closing, I would like to thank the audience for their participation today, and I ask again for donations to our Sustainability Fund. Please see the link in our chat box, and we will also send out an email with a summary of today's program and information on how to give. There is one special giving opportunity I would like to tell you about. For a gift of $500, you can plant a native tree or plant on our new campus, which will be taken care of by one of our students. This is a terrific opportunity to help preserve the native flora of our beautiful new campus setting. More information on this opportunity is in the chat and will be sent by email too. And please stay tuned for our next events, including a focus on JSW Law's work in climate change. Thanks again to all for joining today. Tashidulek.